And welcome one and all to another episode of Common Sense Paranormal Radio. I am your host, ghost hunter, writer, author, Rick Hale. So today I have got a great show lined up for everybody. Joining us very soon is going to be Stevi Etes. Now, if you don't know who Stevi Etes is, allow me to tell you. I just have to find her bio here. Stevi is the host of Truth or Demons podcast and YouTube channel. It takes a deeper look into the muddled world of the paranormal and beyond. On her show, she digs up old cases investigated by the Warrens and takes a deeper look into the truths and facts surrounding them. She investigates places, people, and evidence to find all the truths and present them to her listeners. She also interviews people who have had direct connection and experiences with the Warrens and their organization to shed some light on what it is like in the field alongside Ed and Lorraine Warren and how things are now as a result. Was it truth or was it demons? Now, anytime anybody talks about the Warrens, you get a lot of I guess you could say hate concerning it because, many people really do respect them quite a bit. So today's going to be one of those very controversial shows, but I'm going to try to keep it as light and airy as possible. I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to offend the dead because both the Warrens are currently dead. Currently. And so I don't want to offend the dead, more or less. So Stevie will be joining us in a little bit, but before she does join us, I got some really interesting news. Apparently, something is on its way to our planet. According to some researchers and scientists, as well as astrophysicists and astronomers, an object has been observed quickly making its way towards our innocent little backwater planet on the edge of the galaxy. And well, I'm not so sure if it's something that we need to really be afraid of. Do we need to be afraid of aliens attacking us? I mean, I guess there always can be that possibility of that happening. But to be completely honest with you, I do believe that it is nothing more than a comet. Until it slows down or speeds up, then I don't think we have too much to be afraid about. So hopefully Stevie will be joining us in a little bit. I mean, before we go to that, what is everybody else's take on this? Does everybody think that, um, you know, we're like sitting ducks out here? We don't really have the technology to deal with a intelligence that is far greater than our own. And so, I mean, yeah, it can be a little bit on the scary side to think that at any moment something could visit us. So, there is that. So hopefully Stevie will be joining us very, very soon. And we're going to talk about the Warrens, and we're going to talk about their longtime group, the New England Society for Psychic Research. They have taken part in many investigations, and there's been a lot of controversy. I myself had the great opportunity to interview Guy Lyon Playfair maybe about 10 or 12 years ago. And for anybody who doesn't know, Guy Lyon Playfair was one of the
Hello. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Stevie, are you there?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, let me just turn up a little my phone here a little bit. How about that? Perfect. So
I
I can't see
that's yeah.
you. Are you
Oh,
going to
good.
go
Okay. I was gonna
without
say I set it
camera
up.
today? Oh, there you are. Okay, great. Yeah, I was having some technical difficulties there for a second, and I was a little bit afraid. I'm like, no, please don't do this. In all honesty and full disclosure, I am
Same.
not the most technologically
I
advanced
understand.
species on the planet. So, so yeah, with other podcasts that I've hosted or co-hosted in the past, there was always that person there who handled all that kind of stuff. So here I am flying solo on my own, and thank you so much, Stevie, for joining us. So Stevie, I think that the very first question that everybody wants to know here at Common Sense Paranormal Radio, which I suppose is just myself and the three or four people who probably actually listen, including, and I need to give a shout out to, and I know it sounds gross,
I
but
love that.
Dirty Sanchez. Thanks for always sticking with me. Dirty Sanchez is a person that has been listening to the show and following me ever since I got started way back in the early 2000s. However, this is not about me. This is about you. So, Stevie, tell us,
Well,
how
that's
is it
like my
that you
favorite
got
question, I think.
involved in the paranormal?
It probably started back when I was 8 years old and I saw my first scary movie based on a true story. And from there, I was hooked. My mom and I used to go on amateur
Okay.
investigations when I was in my teens. She'd find spooky stories from locals, and we'd go check these places out and see if we could see anything. And then it kind of dwindled off for a little while, and I didn't really think about it after I moved away from home, and my mom and I weren't investigating anymore. And then the Conjuring movies came out. And I had always watched Lorraine on TV with my mom, Lorraine Warren, and
Mhm.
my mom always had these really strong opinions of Lorraine, and it used to make me wonder why
Yes.
she felt so strongly that Lorraine was faking. So I believed Lorraine at the time, and then these Conjuring movies come out, and they're talking about Ed and
Mhm.
Lorraine Warren, and I'm so excited because I grew up in a kind of I didn't know a lot about about the Warrens as a teenager, just through like Lorraine being on TV. And so I kind of missed the end of their
Yes.
surge of popularity. And so when the movies came out, I was so excited because I'm going to get to learn about the Warrens and see what their stories were and what it was like to investigate for them and everything. And then that first movie came out, and we all know what a big fat lie that was. So that's what started me on this path. I felt this need to research the story, find the facts, and then present the facts to people. And I just told all my friends initially, and they, of course, got sick of me after a while. And one of my friends recommended I start a podcast because I like to talk so much. And that's how I started that. And I've just been researching the Warrens
Mhm.
and educating the public on their background and actual facts. So it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed it.
So, we're going to go into that, but I have my own personal story. Not kind of indirect with the Warrants. Years ago, I co-hosted a podcast called Paranormal Underground Radio, and I had the amazing and great
Oh, wow.
opportunity to interview Guy Lyon Playfair. It was. I still get chills. I actually, if you could see them, I have goosebumps when I talk about it because he's always been a real personal hero of mine. And for those who don't know who Guy Lyon Playfair is, he is since passed away. He passed away about 5 or 6 years ago, sadly. And he was a member of the Society for Psychical Research in London, England, which is one of the oldest um, such organizations in the world. And I wrote them a Facebook message, and I'm like, is there any possibility that I could have somebody from your organization come on the show so I can interview them and we can learn a little bit more about the society? And I got an email back, or rather, excuse me, a Facebook message. It's like, well, Guy Lyon Playfair would like
I'd
to
have been
speak
the
with you.
same way.
I'm like,
I'm
get
like, you're
the
kidding, right?
fuck out of here. I, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. So, anyways, um, so while we were off air, he didn't really want to go into too much detail on the Warrens on air. he was a gentleman and he didn't want to talk badly about them. So while we were off air, and keep in mind, he never said that this was off the record. So I feel very comfortable talking about this. Um, in the Conjuring movie, the first one, or rather the Enfield Poltergeist, it shows it to be very Warren centric.
Sorry.
They are the heroes, the ones who save the day. Hi, puppy. Oh, he's so cute. Uh, I love big black dogs. They're just adorable. Anyways, so he said to me, as we all know, that movie was very Warren centric. They were the heroes. They were the ones who saved the day. And he said, and I quote, "They were there long enough for me to tell them to fuck off." That is exactly, yes, that is exactly what he had said to me. And so we have these movies, the Conjuring movies, that show them to be the hero. But let's talk a little bit about the Warrens first. And they're a group that they formed, the New England Society for Psychic Research. So how is it that the Warrens got their start in this field? Because they've been doing this for they were doing this for
that they started
many
the society
decades.
in 1952. I cannot find. So this has been really interesting for me because when I started my show, I would have answered this question a lot differently. But I've recently been doing a little segment on my show where I go back and I look at the newspaper articles that followed the Warrens and their work. And I can find no evidence, no references, no testimony of
Mhm.
anything around the time they started their society in 1952. The earliest evidence of them working in this field is in 1968, and it's in an article in the paper, and it's just about Ed. It talks about Ed and how he started attending seances and paranormal investigations and learning from other mediums
Mhm.
and people who are in the field. And then he brought in Lorraine. So I find that very interesting that they didn't start together as far as the newspaper reported.
Right. I find it interesting that you say that because I mean, let's face it. There even now there are still plenty of people that have worked in this field for years and decades, and I mean I know even for myself. This is my fourth podcast, actually third podcast, because this is really a resurrection of an older podcast that I did. So I've done three podcasts, written four books, literally hundreds of articles on the subject of ghosts, monsters, aliens, what have you. And still people are like, Rick Hale, who the hell is that guy? So it's like, it is possible to work in this field for many, many years
That is true. That is
and
very
really
true.
not
And
have
that's why
anybody
it makes
even
me
know
wonder
about you.
because the way the newspaper presents it, like the way the Warrens present it, they talk about how they've been investigating since 1952. In an article I read in 1975, they said they had over 2,000 cases they'd investigated it by that point. So obviously, if that's true, there's a lot of people that aren't talking about it, which is fine, especially if they're doing residential cases. It would be important that they weren't sharing that information with the public, in my opinion. But in the matter of how the newspaper reported, it makes me scratch
Right.
my head a little bit because it talks about how Ed was getting into it, how he started going to seances and started talking with mediums and learning how mediums worked. And Lorraine wasn't reported at that time to be involved. And then a couple years later, she's now involved and she's the medium, and they're going on their own
Mhm.
investigations. So it's interesting to me how it's reported in the paper versus how it's told by them versus like how we know like not everybody is known for what they do in this genre. So I think that's interesting.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I think the thing that really has bugged me over the years about the Warrens, they have a tendency to turn every unfriendly spirit or poltergeist into a demon. And I remember back in the 90s, this was back before I, had any questions concerning the Warrens. I thought that they were really awesome. Um, and this is the thing that turned me off to them because I'm very much based in parapsychology rather than pop paranormal, as I call it. Um, it was one of those one-off shows that they show around Halloween, and they were interviewing the Warrens, and I do believe that what they were talking about was the so-called Smurl haunting. Um, and Ed said that that poltergeists are demons. Now that's not like a direct quote. That's very much me summarizing what he said. But there was nothing to imply. There was nothing to infer there. He stated that poltergeists are demons,
I
and that
understand that.
was like the thing that immediately turned me off to them. And yeah. So, with their so-called demons, it would seem that every single investigation that they have ever done, or that the New England Society for Psychic Research has ever done, has always been demons. And yeah, I want you to talk a little bit about some of those cases. You have the Smurl haunting that they were involved in, which, if you've ever read the book about it, it's terrifying. I remember reading it for the first time back in the '80s, and of course, the Devil Made Me Do It, and of course their involvement in the Conjuring movies, the original one, the Parent House. So let's start off with the Parent House. What
Okay,
exactly
so
is it that they
that's a good
did there,
example
and
of
how were
Ed
things
trying to make
problematic
everything
for
into
them?
a demon. When they showed up at the parent house, according to Andrea Perrin and Lorraine, Lorraine walked into the home and said, I sense a presence here. Her name is Bathsheba. And so then it goes on to there's a bunch of back and forth with whether or not the Warrens did the research or Carolyn Perrin did the research, but somebody did the research and found out that there was record of this woman, Bathsheba. She was a witch. She sacrificed children, all that crazy nonsense. And so that was their demon. They Ed fully believed that her being a witch made her a demon spirit now, and she needed to be exorcised according to the movie. And that's problematic because number one, none of that is true about Bathsheba. She didn't do any of those things she was accused of. I actually found very recently a newspaper article where they were talking about this
Mhm.
story at a lecture, and they call it the Bewitched Farmhouse, and they talk about how Bathsheba. They don't actually name Bathsheba in the newspaper, but they say a witch that lived on the property sacrificed a baby with a stake to the head, and in the movie and in other tellings, it's a needle. And then they talk about how the witch hung herself on the property, which is in the film. That is not factual at all. No one ever hung themselves on the property. The woman Bathsheba in question, she
Mhm.
did exist. Bathsheba Sherman. She was a regular woman. She had a family. She had children. She was never accused of witchcraft. There was never anything that was written about her in as far as the Warrens go. That's not true. She lived a normal life. She lived into her 80s. Pretty sure she died of natural causes in her sleep. She's buried near the Conjuring house, which, when the movie came out, led people to vandalize her headstone. And her headstone was absolutely destroyed because people thought she was a witch. And that's very problematic because it wasn't true, and people took it into real life and desecrated a grave that didn't deserve it. And not that any grave deserves it, but especially this time. And then some efforts were made, and they raised some money and they replaced it. And the efforts to tell the truth about Bathsheba have been made also on all angles, trying to get people to understand that that was not real. That this woman did nothing wrong. She is not a villain. She is not a demon. So yeah, that is a great example of how their stories made things very problematic.
Now, when I think about the history in this country alone, anytime a woman decided to be a little on the independent side, perhaps be on the outspoken side, um, she was immediately branded a witch, and that's going back as far as any kind of witch trial goes. Um, was the real Bathsheba like that? Was she,
So
a very
there's not much
independent woman who
reports
thought
as
for
far as
herself
that
and spoke her
goes.
mind?
There, all I can find is that she was a family. She had a family. She had a husband. They're buried next to each other, and they have their children near them too. And they have a fence around their area now. I don't know if it was there before the vandalism, but there is a fence protecting them now. And as far as I could tell, she was just a normal lady. And also, another important fact about her, she never actually lived on that property. She lived nearby.
Oh, interesting. So, now with this house, there's been a lot of stories concerning this house now. Um, recently a lot of controversy concerning one of the owners. So what exactly is going
So,
on with
within the
that
last
house
year, the current
currently, within
owner,
the
as
last
far as
like
we
year or
know, the
two?
current owner is Jacqueline Nunez, and she purchased it a few years ago. I think around 2019, maybe, or maybe a little after that. But she started running it as the attraction that we know it to be, with the
Mhm.
prices we know to be, very, very high, very insane. But because of how high the prices got, people started talking,
Right,
and then
right.
all of a sudden, the owner, Jacqueline, she kind of went off the deep end and started doing really interesting things. I'll try to be kind here. She started accusing her employees of stealing, and her knowledge of how they stole was from the ghost of the house. She
Mhm.
said she told News that the former owner, John Arnold, told her that her employee was stealing money from her, even though she has cameras that are focused on the register and everything. She would be able to see if that were true or not. She didn't look at them. She said she didn't need them, I think. But yeah, she said John Arnold told her, and that was enough, so she fired him. She owed him a lot of money as well, so that was a big deal. It was in the news, him trying to get
Okay.
his pay and dealing with her. And then it didn't end there. She started accusing a very famous TV personality in the ghost hunting world, Jason Hawes, of stalking her and an attempted assassination on her
Mhm.
life. There is a story where I don't know if this is do what? I'm sorry.
Those are, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for interrupting you, but those are serious
Yeah.
allegations. I mean,
Yeah, it was
that's the
getting a
kind of
little
thing that could
wild,
bring about a
and I
defamation
don't
lawsuit.
know. So there was a rumor spreading around where she had put up a video camera, a feed of the front yard of the Conjuring House where people pull into park, and according to what I heard, some people had pulled
Mhm.
in late at night to do their overnight investigation, and she turned them away and wouldn't let them in. And then some people are saying that she thought that person in the truck was Jason coming after her, even though it wasn't. And so that just kind of exploded, these accusations against Jason, and there was a lot of back and forth there, and it just got worse from there. She then was in trouble with the law. She led police on a chase and was inebriated, and there's video footage of this. There is body cam out there of her being
Oh my
interviewed by
God.
police after they got her to stop, and she was arrested for that, I believe. But the big
Yeah.
thing is, she doesn't live in Rhode Island, which is where the house is. She lives out of state. I can't remember which state she lives in, but she now has
Mhm.
a warrant out for her arrest in the state of Rhode Island because she did not come to the court hearing for that incident. And that's where we stand now. We don't know anything else past that.
Wow. I mean, wow. I am like, I think that you and I could both, I think that you and I both agree on this, that the integrity of this community and this
Agreed.
field really is quite important. And yeah, when you hear stuff like this, that is just blows my friggin' mind. Um, it really does cause all of us to look like crazy people. And so it's really wild to think that. And I know that for myself, I would never pay to investigate. That is why I really only specifically do private homes. And I always joke that if I'm in your house, it's because you want me to be there. And so I can't. I don't like the idea of paranormal tourism or play to pay paranormal. Um, so as far as other investigations with the Warrens are concerned, and then I want to hop into Nesper in and of itself because I know the last few years you've had some very distressing situations concerning certain members of Nesper, and we'll get to that. So let's talk about one more, and that is the so-called "The Devil Made Me Do It." I believe that is
Yeah.
a case involving Arnie Johnson, if I'm correct. Like I read the book, and he claims that the devil made him, or a demon made him murder. And so, what is the backstory on that, and how are the
Okay, so I'll
Warrens
try to
involved
do
in
this as
that,
quick as I
and how
can
did they
because it
fuck
is
that one up
so
too?
involved. It is such a big
Pardon my
story.
language, but
So so
yes.
the beginning of it is you
So
have a
give us
little
like a
boy,
thumbnail
David
sketch.
Glatzel. His mom thinks he is suffering from demonic possession because of his behavior. They apparently tried to move his older brother his older sister Debbie Glatzel into a house with Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. They reported stuff happening in the house. Then suddenly the little boy claims this stuff is happening and he's seeing this creature he calls the Beast. The mom, Judy, says, "Oh my God, he's possessed. We got to call someone." That's when the Warrens get called in.
Hmm.
So the Warrens actually come in to exercise. Well, I shouldn't say exercise because that is not what happened. They come in to assess David Glatzel's possession, quote unquote, and decide whether or not he is. And they sit down with the mom and they tell her, with the little boy in earshot, everything that will happen to him. That he will make weird noises, he'll growl, he'll curse, he'll say things that aren't of the norm for him. He will act out, he will have super strength, he'll spit, all these things. He just laid it out for everyone to hear, including the little boy. And then that's exactly what happened. Then the Warrens told Judy to make sure she films it, document everything, journal it, photograph it, everything. So there's all these audio recordings, there's all these photographs. Very similar to the infield case, the photographs don't really look like much. Just they're trying to capture, I guess, what they thought was happening to this little boy.
Hmm.
But all the audio is very comical, in my opinion. It's just a woman screaming at her son and him cursing at her. And it's like he's
Okay.
taking full advantage of this moment in time that he gets to get away with it. So that happens. The Warrens decide he needs an exorcism. The
Okay.
movies present it as him having an exorcism. The Warrens tell it as him having an exorcism. During the exorcism, which didn't happen, uh, they have Arnie Cheyenne Johnson there. And Arnie is David's older sister's boyfriend, fiance, whatever. They are together. They've been together several years. He is part of the family, so he is present for all
Right.
of this. He apparently challenges the so called demon in David and says, "Take me on instead." And Lorraine says, "This is like the cardinal sin. You should never do this. This is terrible. You don't know what you're in for now." So that sets the scene for what Arnie does. Then 6 months go by. There's a bunch of back and forth in as far as storytelling goes on whether or not he experienced anything during those 6 months that would indicate he was demonically possessed. Some say he did, some say he didn't. Then the 6 months is up and he is living with, now this is really important. He is living with his girlfriend, Debbie, and they are in very close proximity to a man that is named Alan Bono. And Alan Bono owns the kennel that Debbie, Arnie's girlfriend, works for. So they live in very close proximity. They rent an apartment from Alan, and she also works there. Alan is known by the whole local people to be very fun and outgoing, loud, boisterous, likes to laugh, likes to drink. He's been there 6 months, and he's from Australia, and everyone knows this is all we know about Alan.
Hmm.
And then at that 6 month mark for Arnie, apparently, according to the story, they were all out to eat. A lot of wine was consumed. According to Arnie Johnson, it was just by Alan Bono, but according to other witnesses, Arnie was also drinking a lot. And then they get home, and Alan doesn't want to end the night. He wants to keep partying. He gets louder. He turns up the music. Now, in the movie, this is portrayed as Alan being a scummy, greasy, annoying partier, and just the way he's portrayed is so sick. It really upsets me. But anyway, so they get in this little scuffle because he wants to party and Arnie says it's time to go. So Arnie's trying to usher his girlfriend Debbie and his sisters who are present out and get them gone. In that scuffle, Alan Bono gets stabbed. There are multiple stories on what went down. Some say they never saw a knife. Some say one of the sisters said she had her arms around Arnie's waist and she felt him trying to stab Alan. there's a lot of different stories. And Arnie's story is he was son. Can you please sit down? Be good,
Sorry, is your dog backing
please.
his butt up in here?
And Arnie's story was that the demon overtook him.
Okay.
He blacked out. He had no memory of what happened. And then he ran off into the woods, still under demonic possession, after all this occurred. Um, According to family members, this is one of my favorite parts. Carl Glatzel is David Glatzel's older brother, and through this whole mess, he says this is all crap. You guys are nuts. You
Mhm.
guys are behaving ridiculously. This is bullshit. This is not real. You guys are dumb. The Warrens, in turn, said Carl was also possessed for his behavior. So apparently, hmm
I remember reading that in the book. Like, I remember reading the paperback
hmm
years and years ago, and I remember
yes.
those kind
So
of
that
exchanges
definitely was
in the
said in the
book.
book, and it was also said in there's a documentary out. If you guys haven't seen it, it's The Devil on Trial on Netflix, and it's where Carl gets a chance to talk and tell his side, and it's brilliant. He tells all the stuff that's
Mhm.
going on. He tells all the backstory and his side that was kind of suppressed. And so what happened? What according to Carl, what happened after Alan was stabbed was Debbie called her dad, and her dad came, and then the EMTs and police came, and Debbie is quoted saying, "You know how he gets when he drinks," in reference to Arnie. So then they catch up with Arnie, and Arnie's story to this day is that he doesn't
Mhm.
remember any of that. He says he was under demonic influence. He did not have control over himself when that happened. He was not responsible. And in turn, they tried to use demonic possession as a defense in court. The judge said, no, we're not doing that. And so they went with self defense instead.
Mhm.
And of course, the whole town knew about this whole story of demonic possession. The Warrens were talking to the news. The Warrens were telling news outlets that this case, this defense of demonic possession, had worked before in cases in England. That was a lie. That was not true. It had been attempted, but it had not been allowed. And so the news was lying on behalf of what the Warrens were saying. And so everybody knew. The jury ended up deciding it was involuntary manslaughter. He got 5 to 20, or I'm sorry, 10 to 20, and he served only 5. He got out on good behavior early. He married Debbie while in jail. They were together up until her passing, and he still sticks to that story that he was demonically possessed. Even though we've had all these people come forward, like Carl, and other people come forward saying, no, this was all nonsense. And the exorcism that David apparently had, Carl Glatzel has proof. These Polaroid photos of when they went to Montreal, Canada, and had a healing prayer done over David.
Yeah, I always think of with David. I used to work in a residential treatment facility many years ago, and I worked with children who had various behavioral as well as psychotic disorders. And I used to weigh over 300 pounds at one time. And I remember one kid completely lost his mind on me. He may have weighed 90 pounds soaking wet, to use a cliche. Um, he whipped me against a wall. And I think that people are like in the Warrens case, they're very quick to say, "Oh, well, that person must be underneath a spirit influence," when really they're dealing with a behavioral disorder or some kind of psychotic disorder. And I always wondered if maybe that's what David Glasso had. Like, maybe he was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or dealing with some kind of a trauma that caused him to behave in such a manner. There's always that possibility. So moving past these cases of the Warrens, I know that you yourself have done a lot of work in exposing the New England Society for Psychic Research for a great deal of shenanigans. And a lot of those shenanigans seem to center around a gentleman by the name of Joe. So let's talk
Absolutely.
real briefly about that because we have maybe 10 or 15 minutes left, if that's okay with you. Great. So we'll talk about that. And so how is it that Joe came on your radar? And what is it that you've done to
Yes.
try and
Okay. So
expose this
I
person?
started my
Because he's kind of a
podcast and I started
degenerate.
exposing some of the Warren stuff, some of their lies from the movies and such. Excuse me. Nesper got wind of it, and I heard that in retaliation to my show, they started their own. So they now have a podcast, and they do a YouTube live every Friday or whenever they can on Friday nights. And one night, they announced that they were going to have a guest on that was part of the Lindley Street story. And I don't know if you know much about that story, but pretty much everyone that was involved. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, so pretty much everyone involved in that story has passed that
Can
was
you tell us
directly
a little bit
involved.
about that?
The Goodens have passed and Marcia has passed, and they were the three
Okay.
main characters of the story. It was the Goodens and their adopted daughter Marcia. So this guest that they're going to have on claims to have been present for everything and claims he was a little boy around the age of 7. So they have him on their show, and they have him at the beginning of the show. They announced that they're going to change names for the protection of people. The only name they changed was this guy, and he was going under the name Joe King. And he was
Mhm.
saying he was there. He was trash talking Marcia, which really upset me. He was saying that she was abusive to him, and that he suffered a lot of trauma because of her when she was the one who went through the trauma because of this event. And it got me really upset, and I immediately didn't believe him. I knew he was lying. And so I needed to find out who he was, first of all, to verify if he was even there at the time. And so I screenshot a photo of his face on the interview, and I put it in reverse Google image search. And the very
Mhm.
first thing it pulled up for me was his criminal child sex offender registry.
Oh, and this is so relevant because this really is very much in the news right now, all of this kind of stuff. There is nothing more
Yes.
sickening and more disgusting than somebody who would do something like this. Um, and it's really disturbing because it seemed like and I correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed
Yes.
like they were really trying to put
Tony,
this
I
person
didn't
out in
realize this, but when
front.
I started kind of trying to look into this, I realized Tony had made a video, a 20-minute video 6 months prior to the interview with this man. And he was talking about how he found this person who was part of the Lindley Street story, and they were
Mhm.
working on a book, and they were going to write a book. And by the end of the video, he's like, and we've written a book, basically. He didn't say that, but he was like, he just kept repeating, we've got a book in the works. We're going to tell his story. To me, that told me that Tony was 100% ready to make money off of him
Mhm.
and put him out in the limelight like he did Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. He took Arnie, who killed somebody and was convicted of manslaughter, into conventions where people bring their children. A lot of people like to bring their children to these events. And so I just saw that being his path and his plan, and I had to shut it down.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Well, I mean, you did that masterfully. Um, you're quite welcome. However, it has had some side effects. I mean, these people have really tried to come after you,
So,
and
firstly,
in
I
in coming
got
after you, what
cease
is
and
it that
desist
they've
letters.
tried to do?
They were purchased from a law firm that was kind of shady, and my lawyer told me that they were,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So,
Wait, a law firm
and
that's
it was
kind of
also
shady?
from
Are
a
you
law firm
kidding
in
me?
New Jersey, and they don't live there. They live in Connecticut, and then of course I live in Tennessee. So that was weird.
Okay.
And then the specifications for it were, I apparently committed defamation against them so bad that they could not specify the details.
I mean, defamation is one of those incredibly difficult things to um, prove in court. I mean, first you have to prove that you're not being defamed, which means you have to show evidence. And
Right.
when it comes to something like that, they're not willing to show that kind of evidence because they
Yeah.
know that the
Yeah,
guy
and
is
he didn't just
guy's
have,
a
that
real
one charge that initially popped up.
sicko.
He has a rap sheet a mile long. Like he has been, it wasn't a one-off. He didn't learn his lesson, so to speak. So yeah, and then it continued from there. There's been a lot of harassment. There's been some doxing.
Yeah.
I don't like. Stevie is my real name, but it is not my legal name. It is short for something, which is Stephanie. That's not that, big a deal. But they decided that some of
Sure.
their minions, people that follow them religiously, thought they should dox me. So they started posting my full name in comments and stuff on YouTube.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, my brother's name
Yeah.
is Steven, but I call him Steve
Yeah. And
or
they were like, yo,
Stevo or
she's
El
faking who she
Steverino
is.
if
She's
you're
lying about
not into the whole
identity. And I'm
brevity
like,
thing.
there's a lot of content creators that don't use their real name for obvious reasons.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I mean, I say that originally I am from Chicago, but I don't live in Chicago. I live about 35, 40 miles north. And when I started doing all of this kind of stuff, my wife was like, look, don't tell people where you live. Just say
Hmm.
where you're from. And it's like, of course, I'm going to respect that. My wife is asking me to do that. But I have had people actually like, dude, you don't live in Chicago. Never said I did, man. Said I'm from Chicago. I'm from the uptown neighborhood. Um, but yeah, so it's like that kind of thing. I mean, people really are very petty with that kind of stuff. But what have you done to, try and
Yes,
protect
yes.
yourself against
So
these people?
your best
Because they
weapon in
really do seem to
situations
be
like
out for
this is
blood.
to educate yourself. I have a friend who is a lawyer. She keeps me very, very well informed on what I can
Of
and can't
course.
do on my show. She helps me out when I'm confused or when I have questions or when I'm not sure about something. And then to further that, I actually found a lawyer who was comfortable being on social media and I interviewed her and I had her break down for all the people in the community because I unfortunately am not the only one who has dealt with stuff like this. There are cease and desist letters rampant in the community. You could just buy them off the internet, send them all over the place.
Sure.
So people get scared when they get them. They think, oh my God, I did something illegal. I better just delete
Yeah.
everything. I better just stop what I'm doing. I'm so scared. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to go to jail just because I wanted to make content. So I interviewed this lawyer and I had her on and she explained what your parameters are for the legalities in this field, what you can and can't do, what is defamation, what is not, what it takes to prove defamation, what you do when you've been accused of it, stuff like that. And so I thought that was really important for the community to have because I know there's people out there that have received letters and threats and get so scared that they just quit. And it breaks my heart for them because they didn't know that they didn't have to do that.
Right. Yeah, I have one of the people in this community that I have
Hmm.
criticized quite a bit is Zach from Ghost Adventures. Um, I I had the opportunity to interview him many, many years ago on Paranormal Underground Radio, and I always say that he's probably, quite possibly, one of the most unlikable people I've ever spoken to. Um, when I said that, people lost their friggin' minds about that. I got told that I was going to be sued for defamation. I'm like saying somebody is unlikable is not defaming them. And when it comes to people like
Yep.
Joe King, which I think that name is hilarious, joking. Um, yeah, it's like everything that this guy did is public knowledge. It's out there in newspapers. It's out there in the whole realm of being, I guess you might
Yep.
say. So it's like there really isn't much that they can do
Yep.
to
Exactly.
bring this kind of a lawsuit against you or anyone else. So yeah, I just I have you gotten some kind of peace with this? Have they
It is
finally let
currently
up, or
ongoing.
are they still giving you shit?
So I try to stay out
My
of
goodness.
the people involved. There's a lot of people. There's a lot more people involved. In fact, I actually did a whole little mini series called Mendacity, where I interviewed a bunch of people that
Mhm.
were wronged by someone in the community who is now associated with Nesper. So his association with Nesper has now made me a target of his and his community. And so there is pretty much any time we talk about any of this, there's an onslaught of comments. People make lives. These people make lives, and make up stuff. Recently, they made up that one of my co-hosts on another show hacked someone's bank account, but they're not filing charges against him or have a police report or anything to prove that this
Oh
happened.
my God.
So they get upset that we're not engaging in their drama, so they create more drama,
Sure.
and it's just been ongoing. It's been great.
Well, I'm sorry. I hope that eventually that you will find peace from this and that they will knock this,
Yeah.
I guess the only way I could possibly describe it is knock this stupid shit off. So, Stevie, we have reached the point on this show, Common Sense Paranormal Radio, that you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I call this the shameless self-promotion segment. So tell us about what it is that you have coming up. Are you still doing your show? Where they can find you? Got
All
any
right.
articles, books?
Actually, I'm
You're
currently
going to be on
working on. I'm about
television,
to put
whatever,
out
and
my
go.
Annabelle Part 3. I have done 2 parts to the Annabelle story. I keep getting more information, and keep doing more interviews that involve people related to the story. So I have that coming, and I'm very excited about it. I have another interview with the woman who wrote the first article about Annabelle coming out. And then I am speaking at an event, the Fearsome Folklore Festival in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It is my first speaking event, and I'm so excited.
Mhm.
I will be there on August 23rd.
Thanks. Oh, that was something that I wanted to bring up was the recent death of Dan Rivera with
Absolutely not.
Nesper. And I'm just going to end it with this. Do you believe Annabelle killed him? There you go, ladies and gentlemen, because neither do I. I don't even believe that that doll is actually possessed by anything. That's just another BS thing that the Warrens put out there. So, Stevie Ate, thank you so much for being on the show. It is always a pleasure talking to you. You're such an incredibly friendly and personable individual. I wish you the best of luck in everything that you have coming up. And I really honestly hope that Joe King and his
Maybe
gaggle
one
of
day.
weirdos
But
will
thank you so much for having me.
eventually
I'm so
leave you
excited to
alone.
be on your show and talk about all this stuff. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There is Stevie Ate of Truth or Demons podcast. Next week, my family and we will be in Virginia visiting my aunt and her family. Is the last surviving family member.
Oh,
Seriously,
wow.
Stevie, I'm not kidding you. It's like the fall of the House of Usher up in my family here, except of course without the ghosts and the implied drug use. Um, So there will not be a show, but maybe the following week we will have somebody on. You never know who is going to drop by your friendly neighborhood. Common Sense Paranormal Radio. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you
Thank
again,
you.
Stevie.
You
And
too.
I hope everything turns out the way you need it to turn out. Have a good one.